Thank you, David. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you for all that you do in leading this organization, National Taxpayers Union, this wonderful National Taxpayers Conference. You guys are in for a great day. Good morning. I'm excited to be your post-reception speaker. I understand it went on until about an hour ago, thank you all for making me so welcome this morning. To Dwayne Pardee, your president, to all those gathered here, and to the co-sponsors and partners, thank you for coming together. You know, I was talking this morning to Dave and Jeannie, and saw the headline in USA Today that said, you know, who speaks for the Republican Party? And that's a great debate on the left these days, and I know they're very sincere about it. They're worried. They just want to make sure they're talking to the right person. Well, I got a news for them, and it's going to be evident in 2010. The American people speak for the conservative movement, and this party will prosper because we will fight for the values of the American people through Election Day 2010. That's who speaks for this party and this movement, is the people of the United States of America. I'm going to put my watch on the podium, and just to give you all a false sense of security, you've got a great program today. Ken Blackwell, I'm like a total hero of his. If I wasn't driving to North Carolina later today with my wife, I'd come back by for lunch just to hang out with him. Steve Moore, so thank you all for taking time to be a part of this outstanding program. And there's so many things I want to talk to you about this morning, but I do want to leave some time for questions. And then I'll have to run to Capitol Hill, as we're still in session today. But I'm kind of mindful of that new pastor at a rural church in my district in Indiana. He came in, he wanted to do some innovation. So he thought he would initiate a Sunday night service at his church. So he put it in the bulletin. They'd have a service for the first time ever at 6 o'clock Sunday night. He scheduled it, and he showed up, and Dave, he showed up there at the church, and he walked in the back of the little white buckboard chapel, and he saw just one lonely farmer sitting on the front row of the church at 5 minutes to 6. Then he walked up to him, and he said to him, well, what do you think we ought to do? And that farmer put his thumbs in his belt buckle and said, well, he said, Reverend, I don't know much about the Bible, I don't know much about preaching, but one thing I do know, when I call my cows in to feed them and only one comes, I still feed him. The pastor actually thought there was some timeless wisdom in that. So he said, well, let's go. And he said, had that one lonely parishioner sit down there about where Jeannie is, and he went up to the front podium and spread out his notes, and he went after it for about 45 minutes, mopped his brow, walked to the back of that church, and straightened his jacket and waited for that one faithful parishioner to come out. And he said, well, what'd you think? That farmer looked at him and he said, well, Reverend, he said, I don't know much about the Bible, I don't know much about preaching. He said, but one thing I do know, when I call my cows in to feed them and only one comes, I don't give them the whole load.
Cows are here.
I'm not going to give you the whole load. Not like you people need it anyway. Well, I want to talk on a couple of bigger picture things. I mean, frankly, David made some very kind comments. Dwayne was saying before we gathered here today. You know, I'm kind of I got elected in the year 2000, and as Ed and I were talking a little bit earlier, I had run for Congress back when Ronald Reagan was in the White House, and I'd become a Republican because of Ronald Reagan. Ran for office when I was 29 years of age. In '88, and then again in 1990, and lost. When I came back again, and like Newt Gingrich did, I ran for the third time and got elected to Congress in the year 2000. Well, you know, when I arrived on Capitol Hill, and the very first bill that President Bush sent to Capitol Hill was No Child Left Behind. I felt like a Minuteman who showed up 12 years late for the revolution. You know, I ran for office to, end the Federal Department of Education, to relimit government along constitutional lines. The first thing, I arrived ready to go, suited up, and the first thing they hand me is No Child Left Behind. I kind of said, well, no. And I was one of 25 Republicans that said no to my new president on his #1 legislative priority. And Pete Hoekstra led the effort on the floor, and you know, we had 50 people in the Congress vote against No Child Left Behind. I don't think you could get 50 people to vote for it today. Because education is a state and local function that ought to be governed and driven by the taxpayer and by parents, period, paragraph. Anyway, my second term of Congress is one of the things I tell you is, well, we're going to do this education thing, but that's, you know, it's a one-time thing. We're going to get right back to doing, you know, what we came here to do. And then I get elected in 2002, re-elected rather, and then they send me the, you know, the Medicare prescription drug entitlement. You know, the first new entitlement since the Great Society. And I sat there and I just said, guys, you know, if we keep governing, you know, like Democrats, they're eventually going to go with the professionals, right? And I really do believe it. I mean, when I look at Election Day 2006, when I look at Election Day 2008, I don't think we so much lost our majorities as we lost our will. I really believe that because the Republican Party walked away from the principles of limited government and traditional values and reform, and we became embarrassed about who we were. In so many ways, the American people got embarrassed about us, and they showed us the door. I mean, it's the only way you can explain it. Election Day, 2008, 22% of Americans defined themselves as liberal. And yet they managed to elect the most liberal one-party government in American history. I was there on Fox News, Fox News Sunday, the Sunday after the election. And I'll never forget, some mouthpiece for the incoming administration came out and said, there's a major, I think it was John Podesta, he said, there's a major progressive realignment in America. I said, what? Major progressive realignment in America? It wasn't a realignment in America. You know, they didn't, you know, give them credit, they won the election, but they didn't really win the argument. We lost the argument. We lost the credibility of the American people, and there was something kind of strangely encouraging in the elections of 2006 and 2008. What they said to me was the American people still value people who say what they mean and mean what they say. All right? And I'd rather go, you know, I'd rather go with the guy who I don't necessarily agree with than the guy who's always telling me what I want to hear, but he doesn't really mean it. I mean, there's something to that, I really believe. So we're in the wilderness, and the only question is, what are we going to do about it? You know, there's an awful lot of advice out there for the conservative movement. Some of it from conservatives. Anybody get tired of these people who, you know, oppose everything we believe in, telling us how we can get our movement together? You'll pardon me for being a little bit skeptical about their advice. There's a lot of people saying, you know, we need new ideas, right? You know, we've got to come up with some new, fresh ideas. You know, we're getting new branding. That's one of my, you know, most contemptible phrases out there. Is, you know, we got to rebrand as though we're cattle waiting for the steel to hit our hip. Right? Just get a fresher brand, a new haircut, right? Or here's another. You got to use new technologies to reach voters we haven't been reaching before. You know, like if we just started knew how to use those cell phones the way that the Obama campaign did, we'd have won, right? Well, I think my bottom line is: look, do we need a fresh application of our principles to the challenges facing America today? You bet. Do we need to use new technologies? I've Twittered a couple times since I got here. Okay, a couple people got that. The rest of you, there's a seminar later today. I mean, I got a Facebook page. I mean, I got all this because I got teenagers. All right, I'm way ahead of you people on this stuff. So I got all this. But look, I think more than anything else, not the ideas, not the marketing, not the branding, not the twittering. We've got to fight for national security, limited government, fiscal discipline, traditional moral values with everything we've got. And if we stand for those things, the American people will rally to our cause. I believe in that. I really believe we're on the verge of a great American awakening. As people are writing the obituary of the conservative movement in this country, I see something's happening out there. You know, with the so-called stimulus bill this January. I went home, never forget, I went to Donner Center in Columbus, Indiana on a Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Now, I do town hall meetings all the time. I used to be in talk radio. I had a talk radio show for about 10 years across the state of Indiana. It was kind of Rush Limbaugh on decaf. You know, and I was actually Rush's lead-in in a bunch of markets, and I, you know, got better ratings than him in a couple of just. And But anyway, you know, so I love town hall meetings. I love to hear from people. But usually I'm not a big draw, you know. Obviously, so when I do a town hall meeting, I got 20 or 30 people showing up, arms folded. I got my fair tax guys. I got people that got a problem with the local gas pipeline. I mean, and I got people who got a Social Security problem. I show up at this thing at Donner Center where I grew up as a kid going swimming. And I'm going down the hallway, and I see people lined up down the hallway going into the room, and I holler at my district director. I said, "Go ahead and get maintenance to get the door open to the room for the auditorium." And he looks at me and he says, "It's open." Now this is early February, right after this porculus bill is rolling down like a freight train through the Congress. I said, "It's open." And he says, "Yeah, Mike, we get 300 people in there. 300 people on a Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock in Indiana in February." And I walked in there thinking, okay, what's happening here? And I mean to tell you, men and women, every stripe, every race, every creed, every color, Democrats and Republicans, people wearing suits and people wearing coveralls, they're standing there going, "Don't do this. Don't do this to our country. Don't do this to our grandchildren." So I think something's happened. The Tea Party thing to me was just, it was just the latest manifestation. It will not be the last. I know many of you were out there in these thousands of gatherings, widely reported on CNN and MSNBC. Or not. Don't you get tired of the media out there? I love these people. I used to work in the media. I mean, they're all liberals. I mean, I know all of them in Indiana. And they're not, a lot of them are nice people, but they're very, Anyway, it's like this week, it's a great column out. We came out with this, I'll tell you about it in a second. We came out with this massive energy proposal this week. I mean, it's getting very good reviews. It's an alternative to the national energy tax proposal. It's an all of the above strategy and lots of good review. And ABC News and CBS News led that night with stories about rising gasoline prices and never mentioned that Republicans had a proposal. And somebody said to me, "Doesn't that make you mad?" And I said, "No, it confirms my worldview." And it's just the reality. But anyway, bottom line is, I want to tell you all, I think something really big is happening. And the media can't ignore it. Your being here today, that you represent organizations all across this country, is evidence that something is happening. And it's not a Republican movement. It's not under the rubric of any particular organization. It's not the agenda, all right? But it is rising, I believe, out of the wellspring of American ideals. Let me tell you where I think it's come from. Last fall, I'll never forget, probably one of my hardest experiences since being in Congress was that Wall Street bailout business last fall. And I'll tell you what, it is a source of great satisfaction to me that a majority of House Republicans, against a gale force wind of media coverage and business pressure, a majority of House Republicans voted against the Wall Street bailout not once but twice. And I think the American people deserve to be reminded of that. And let me tell you, it was amazing how I'll tell you the story of that. I mean, I'll never forget, the president of the United States basically goes on television that Thursday night and announces that the entire world economy is about to come to a crashing halt. Now we knew there was a credit crisis. Credit was seizing up. I mean, the message, we're going to save this company in the summer, we're not going to save this other company. I mean, they were all of a sudden, the capital markets abhor uncertainty. We created uncertainty. People were pulling back. They didn't know where money should go, where money would be safe. So the president goes on television Thursday night. And I have a rule that if I ever raise my right hand and take the oath of office under Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States of America, I got a rule, is don't ever go on television and tell the American people that there's an economic crisis. Because if there wasn't one before you said it, there will be as soon as you go off the air. Okay? You know how about Ronald Reagan? Ronald Reagan, you know, and the whole, I lost a lot of money on that Black Monday thing. And Reagan goes out there, remember he walks out to the microphones? You're not old enough to remember that, but I was old enough. Reagan walked out and he just winked and said, it'll be all right, it's just a Wall Street thing. Market went boom. You know. Anyway, George Bush, God bless him, I love the man, but I didn't like his economic policies more often than not. But he gives that speech, and then they sent a memo to Capitol Hill Saturday. I was back in Indiana, trundling around in Bluffton, Indiana, and my staff faxes me the memo. 3-page memo asking for $700 billion. We added it up, it was about $1 billion a word. I'm not kidding you. Somebody said to me, well, how were you able to evaluate the president's proposal? I said, it's only 3 pages. I mean, I'm a congressman, but I can handle 3 pages, right? And so, truthfully, you know, they send the 3-page thing. So here I am, I'm doing this thing again. I'm having flashbacks to No Child Left Behind and Medicare, and I think, well, you know what? Hey, this just isn't what I came here to do. I didn't come here to nationalize every bad mortgage in America. It's just not, you know. Look, freedom to succeed includes the freedom to fail. Okay? So I got my BlackBerry thing, you know, fastest thumbs on Capitol Hill, and I typed up a statement, put it out on Saturday night. I was the first Republican I think the first public official in Washington to come out against the Wall Street bailout. And I thought that thing had passed on. They were asking for it to pass Monday, you remember? President sent it to Hill Saturday, he wanted it on Monday. And then everybody goes on the Sunday morning shows, and it's like you know, that We Are the World music video years ago. Remember, everybody's holding hands, we're all, you're right. I mean, we got Republicans and Democrats on the Sunday shows going, you know, you're right, we don't want to do this, but we got to do it, you know. And even some of my heroes out there were in the punditocracy, conservatives who had fought and fought and fought, said, no, you're right, we've got to go ahead and do it. And then George Stephanopoulos whips out my little press release on national television, and he reads it to some of the Republican leaders on there and says, well, now Mike Pence in Indiana says you're going to try to nationalize every bad mortgage in America. And I think, well, I like it on the back of the bench. You know, I mean, I don't need a good parking spot. So anyway, what happened was, this is a spontaneous combustion that's now happening all over America. What happened, truthfully, was I get to Capitol Hill, and it was like a secret society. People were coming up to me going, yeah, I saw on television that you're like not for this thing. And I go, no, man, it's not what I came here to do. I'm like a conservative. and they say to me, hey, you know, they look to the left, look to the right, and go, I'm with you. You know. And then you got guys like Tom Price, who you heard from last night. Isn't he a great guy? I love Tom Price. Tom Price pulls together the Republican Study Committee, Jeb Hensarling, these guys, John Shadegg, you know, all rally around the cause and say, we're not doing this, you know. Heck no, we won't go. And we go to the floor of that, I'll never forget that day as long as I live. We go walking onto the floor the first day of the Wall Street bailout vote, and people walk up to me, because I was kind of the tacit, you know, leader of the fight, and they walking up and going, what's going to happen? I said, we're going to get killed. We're going to lose. Of course we're going to lose. Well, God, it's an amazing thing. You saw men and women rise up, stand up, and reject the idea that you ought to look to Main Street America to bail out bad decisions on Wall Street. It was an inspiring moment for me. Then the Senate got a hold of it, porked it all up, and passed the thing through. They got it out the next week. But anyway, end of the story on that, and then I'll close. You know, I'm a pretty upbeat guy. You can probably tell 8 in the morning, you know, National Taxpayers Conference. You go, man, I want to see this guy when he's on. I mean, I'm a pretty upbeat guy. You know, I try to start my day on my knees, and that puts me in a good mood, and I'm pretty undiminished after that. But I was down that Friday, to be honest with you. I caught the plane back to Indiana. I was out in Henry County, Indiana, that Saturday morning. I mean, we lost that thing, and I thought freedom had lost. I really did. I thought we'd see the Congress really walk away from a fundamental commitment to a centerpiece of freedom, you know, because, you know, when government expands, freedom contracts. I mean, as you look at this aggressive expansion of government under this new administration, you just, every time government expands in control in our lives, you lose some of your freedom. And anyway, so I went out to the Boy Scout Jamboree. I love doing that stuff, and I gave a little talk on George Washington. George Washington's kind of my guy. I mean, Christian statesman. I mean, I actually dyed my hair a little more like George Washington. Anyway, I'm telling all these little Boy Scouts with one shirt tail hanging out, standing on a hillside on a cold September day in rural Indiana, and I'm telling them about George Washington. And then after I finish up, about a half a dozen parents gaggled around me to chat. And a lot of them were talking about the bailout vote the day before and their disappointment in that. And I think they could tell I was a little down. They were bucking me up a little bit. This one man was standing off on the periphery. And after the half a dozen or so parents had drifted away, he walked up to me and he was holding his hat in his hand. He was modestly dressed. And what he said to me will always be a source of confidence for me about what this nation's all about. He walked up to me and he said, "Congressman, I saw in the newspaper that you were going to be out here." And he said, "I lost my job yesterday, but I wanted to come out here and thank you for voting against that Wall Street bailout." I was struck by that. And I said, "Sir, I'm very moved by your stand. If there's anything I can do to help you, let me know." But I said, I appreciate, I admire the position you take. Something like that. And he looked at me and he shook his head, said words I'll never forget. He said, "No, there's nothing." He says, "There's nothing to it, Congressman." He said, "I can get another job. I can't get another country." That man's my source of confidence. You all are my source of confidence. Ever since I've served in Washington, D.C., two things have happened in my heart. My opinion of your national government has gone down every day. But my opinion of the American people has gone up. This is a great nation. This is a good nation. It is a courageous nation. I have seen it in the uniformed men and women on aircraft carriers in the Mediterranean and walking in the streets of Ramadi and Balad and Kabul and Jalalabad. I've seen it in the way Americans poured themselves forward and flooding in my state in the aftermath of Katrina. And I saw it in that man that day on that hillside. And I believe with all my heart, on the basis of that resilience and that courage and that commitment to freedom, we will find our way through this present crisis, and freedom will lead the way. So help us God. Thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions. Anybody wants to head to the mic, so I've got about 10 or 15 minutes here. Thank you, Ike, for that. Thank you for that affirmation. I thought you all were leaving. Questions, comments, thoughts? Yes, sir, please. Good morning.
Good morning, Congressman. Healthcare. What the big debate coming up? What your view? What's going on?
Big debate coming up on healthcare. I know Matt Blunt was supposed to be speaking on this panel this morning. His dad, who I think is really one of the keenest minds on Capitol Hill, and I think would be an extraordinary and valuable conservative addition to the United States Senate. Roy Blunt is leading our healthcare working group. And you can go to gop.gov and get the outline of our principles, but probably in about a week and a half, we'll have a full-blown Republican alternative that'll be all about expanding access to health insurance by strengthening the fundamental underpinnings of the free market. The President again today, I saw in the newspaper this morning, the President again today is reaffirming his commitment to a government-run option, which is a pathway to socialized medicine. To me, it's you are letting the fox into the hen house if you have a government option in the private health insurance industry, men and women. It will ultimately devour and and destroy the private health insurance industry of this country. And any dispassionate observer knows that. The Washington Post knows that. Can I say that again with incredulity in my voice? The Washington Post 2 months ago said that a government-run option would be a disaster for health insurance in this country, and they oppose it. The president's for it, and also they're looking here at the National Taxpayers Conference. They're looking. The president has pretty much signaled through his various spokesmen that he is open to taxing your health insurance benefits. We don't have to do that. Health savings accounts, association health plans, there are reforms Republicans are going to be advocating that will essentially increase the competitive marketplace of health insurance in this country, and we're going to be fighting tongue and claw for it. And I'm telling you what, I really believe we win that one. I think we're winning on energy. If somebody wants to ask me about energy, I'll go on and on. But I think we're winning on their national energy tax. But I really do believe, with a little bit of traction here and a little bit of engagement here, I believe most Americans. A woman walked up to me at the library in Elwood, Indiana, just a very, very nervous look on her face, and said, if the president gets his health care plan, am I still going to be able to choose my doctor? And I said, ma'am, I can't guarantee you that. In fact, my bet is no, eventually. Because government ultimately is in the rationing business. That's what government does with limited resources. The marketplace has that ability to geometrically respond to consumer needs and constantly innovate along the lines of Leonard Reed and iPencil and all the genius and magnitude of marketplaces. Government's a bunch of people, you know, like me. I mean, you just don't want that. I don't know anything about healthcare, but I know what works. Yes, sir?
Talk to us about energy bonds.
Yeah, you know, softball. You're my new favorite guy. Yeah, I was tapped by Republican leader John Boehner. John Boehner had got a vision last year for setting up working groups, kind of breaking out of the mold of the traditional committee structures to get fresh ideas and bring lots of people together. He asked me to chair the American Energy Solutions Group, and I would love everybody in this room, go to GOP.gov. We unveiled this thing. It's in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. We had an editorial. If you go to GOP.gov, you can read the whole bill, 160 pages. You know, you got gasoline prices going up. They're going to keep going up, all right? Because in inflationary times, people run the commodities. All right, so you're going to have the futures guys driving up. Get ready. So we're at $72 a barrel a day or two ago. It's going to keep going up. All right. And so we're going to see gasoline prices go up. But utility rates around the country are going up. But what the Democrats' answer to our energy crisis is essentially to pass a national energy tax on every household in America of more than $3,000 a year. That's the cap and trade bill. Okay? I mean, it just boils. Ask the Heritage Foundation, that's a partner in this event. You read what Heritage Foundation has done on this. In fact, I'll cite as authority. If you wonder whether utility rates are going to go up, let me quote to you President Barack Obama. January of a year ago, told the San Francisco Chronicle, and you can see the video at GOP.gov. He told the San Francisco Chronicle, you know, if my cap and trade legislation becomes law, utility rates will necessarily skyrocket. So when we started to say $3,000 per American household, the left started, you know, chasing me with cameras and stuff, putting me on YouTube, very unflattering light in my judgment. You know, how can you use that number? How can you use it? We finally said, you know, hey, we'll go with the Heritage Foundation's numbers on the deal, but how do you define skyrocket? Okay, I mean, Mr. President, what does skyrocket mean? Because the president said utility rates will skyrocket if they're planned out. Because that's the whole thing. These people are like allergic to fossil fuels. The environmental left is, I mean. They don't like it. They want to get over it. Coal-burning power plants and stuff where we get 95% of our electricity in the Midwest are going to take a serious hit. And as the president also said, I'll quote him, he said, utility rates will necessarily skyrocket because the cost of utility companies will go up and they will, quote, pass that along to consumers. So Republicans have a better alternative. We have basically a four-part plan that begins with, I think the American people deserve more access to American oil. I believe we need to bring about the kind of reforms that will truly unleash the opportunity for domestic oil exploration on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in Alaska, and in those unexplored areas of the Gulf. Why are we looking around the world? So, start with oil and natural gas. Let's do it. Let's roll down the road. Secondly, let's make a commitment to renewables. So we're going to take the lease revenues from the oil leases. We're going to put it in a renewable energy trust fund so that people can have money to borrow to develop innovation and technology, batteries, solar, wind, and the rest. Great. Item 3 is we are calling for, along with our colleagues in the Senate, 100 nuclear plants in the next 20 years in the United States of America. Tax incentives. National Taxpayers Union always likes the tax credit stuff, tax deductions. Lots of tax incentives to tell you what to do, but if you want to re-insulate your house or business, we'll give you lots of good incentives to do that. So you know, the Republican plan basically results in more energy independence, more jobs, and the Democrat plan results, frankly, in, I think ultimately will result in more energy dependence with regard to our electricity, because they're going to drive electrical generating power plants offshore, and it's going to. The current estimates are between 2 million and 8 million jobs will be lost. Excuse me, 2 million and 7 million jobs will be lost if their bill becomes law. So we're taking this case to the American people. We traveled the country a couple of weeks ago with energy summits, and I think we're starting to win. I'm doing the Republican radio address this week on the topic. I mean, I'm going to record it this morning to follow the President's address, so my remarks will be literally heard by tens of Americans across this country. But we're going to use every means at our disposal. I used to be in radio, all right? You run something on Saturday, everybody's listening to the ballgame. But the bottom line is, we think we've got a better solution. We think we've got the better piece of the argument, and we think the American people are with us. So,
One more, sure.
One more. Okay, great. Thank you, Dave. Yes, sir, please.
Is the number of earmarks increasing or diminishing?
Oh gosh, is the number of earmarks? Well, I'm requesting no earmarks. And I'm pleased to say, I think this is the first time in the modern era, all 3 of the Republicans' top leaders in the House of Representatives are declining to request earmarks, or staying out of that system. John Boehner's never requested earmarks in his career. Eric Cantor and I, in the last several years, after fighting for earmark reform, we finally decided that the best way we can fight it is from outside the system. To me, you know, it's kind of funny, because when I was first...
It's a short question.
The earmark demons are coming. Anyway, you know, when I was first elected, I just thought earmarks pretty. I never traded a vote for an earmark. I never, agreed to do, But if we got a request from Muncie, Indiana, for some road funding, or Ball State University for research money, I'd pass it along to the committee, and they could decide whatever they decided. I actually. I'm a guy that just is a constitutionalist. I think the Constitution gives the Congress the ability to spend the people's money in large ways and in small ways. So I'm philosophically opposed to the idea of members making specific project requests. But to Tom Coburn's point, earmarks have really become kind of the gateway drug to runaway federal spending. I mean, the truth is, here's the chemistry, and then I'll close, and David's very kind to push me out the door so my staff doesn't chew me out. Here's kind of the way it works, is they come to you with some big monstrosity. Say, hypothetically, the prescription drug entitlement that passed in 2003. Just hypothetically. And you look at it and say, you know what, that's exactly not what I came here to do. And they say, well, what about that bridge you've been needing? Right? So we got a bridge thing. It's kind of like the reason why a military supplemental bill I just heard is going to have cash for clunkers in it. We got a bill. Read the paper this morning. The military supplemental. I think war funding bills ought to be about war funding. I don't think we should be piling runaway federal spending on the backs of our soldiers. But they're doing that again this week. And so you got cash for clunkers, billions of dollars to help people go out and trade in their clunker car for some fuel-efficient new vehicle, which seems to me, I didn't support the auto company bailout. I don't support auto buyer bailouts either. But what happens is that when somebody says, well, I don't like that idea, and then they say, well, what if we put this thing in it? Well, I might reduce my dislike. And so it becomes a gateway drug for runaway federal spending. People vote for things that they did not come to Washington to vote for because they got a little thing over here, a little thing over there. I'm, of course, speaking hypothetically. Okay. And so, you know, I believe that the pathway toward reform is to fundamentally restore integrity to that system. And you restore integrity and transparency the way Jeff Flake has advocated for years. Jeff's my closest friend in the Congress. Jeff's been a visionary on this. Jeff Flake essentially said, offer the bill in committee. It can offer your project request in committee. It's open. Put it on the internet. Everybody can see it. It can be voted in or voted out. It can be voted in or voted out on the floor. And then it cannot be added in the conference committee where tens of thousands of earmarks are dropped in the dead of night. And nobody knows who they do it. Some people are in jail today because they had stuff added in the dead of night into bills in this terrible system that we have. Does not serve the interest of taxpayers in the small term, in terms of the actual spending items themselves. But I want to tell you, it's far beyond that in terms of doubling the national debt in the last 10 years. I believe that the earmarking culture in Washington, D.C. greatly facilitated the fiscal irresponsibility of the last 10 years, and it is facilitating the fiscal recklessness of this administration, and that's why we have to end earmarks as we know them and restore public confidence in the way we manage the public treasury. This has been an honor. Thank you all very much.